Okay, good morning everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mohammed Sattar Rasul, and we are from the National University of Malaysia, or we call as University Kebangsaan Malaysia. So together with me is Dr. Siti Nurdiana and also Dr. Malisa and Dr. Nur Azidawati. Can you hear me clearly?
Sir, yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much to the University of Kerala for inviting us to be part of the 1-week International Virtual Capacity Building Program on designing instruction through project-oriented blended learning. So thank you very much to the committee members and also Dr. Samir. So the topic of our workshop is about integrating blended learning approach in STEM education. What I would like to let everyone know is about the aim of this workshop is to discuss the strategies to implement and integrate blended learning environment in STEM education in order to develop creative, innovative, critical, and inventive students. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It has been talked hugely all over the world about STEM education, about how to embark STEM education, what is the purpose of STEM education. So I can share with you that in the National University of Malaysia, UKM, we have a lot of STEM programs being conducted by our experts and also from different faculties. So many faculties involved in STEM education. Although their main research is in pure science or engineering, but they do help in education to develop a STEM project, because STEM education needs a lot of researcher from engineering and science department to turn their research output into modules for education. So as you can see, we have Science of Smart Communities program, which consists of energy, transportation, wireless communication, urban infrastructure module. And we also have a few programs for related to biology, which is about sea nature. And we also have a program like, as you can see, Right Diet for Kids, which is conducted by the Faculty of Medicine. So for STEM education, it is a responsibility of all the faculty members in the university actually, and and also all the researchers that involved in science and engineering research. That is another aspect that we should look into, how to develop our STEM education. So before we go further to, share with you about the approach of blended learning, I would like to explain a little bit about STEM education. So this is my initiative with University of Kerala way back in 2017. I think Dr. Samir is the focal person for this project, which we call as Erudite Scholar Program. So I've conducted a STEM program, which is what we call as Science of Smart Communities, to a group of teachers or students of University of Kerala. So it has been a very good experience for me to conduct these activities in University of Kerala in 2017. Okay, as I mentioned before, that every faculty involved in establishing or conducting or developing STEM program activities and also instructional materials for STEM education to help the schools, the Ministry of Education, which carry out a school-based education. So how do we do that? We have a conceptual framework which we transform our graduates' research or programs to give an impact to the society. That is the first part. what we do is from the research university, we transform graduates program, or we transform graduate research to give an impact to the graduate research or on society. And the second part, we engage the graduate fellows. These are the research part, and these are graduate fellows. We never conduct a program that is not based on research. That is what, that is the purpose of research university. So from the output of the research become an outcome to used to be to conduct in schools. So graduates, fellows, we engage it hugely to enhance their research, societal context, communication skill, leadership, team building, and enhance their teaching skills as well. Although they are not from the Faculty of Education, but we train them how to promote or explain about their research. And it benefits the students, teachers, and also parents. Professional development for teachers, and we help teachers in content and pedagogy enrichment. We help teachers to enhance STEM teaching and learning. We do some mentorship or mentoring program. And last but not least, greater STEM career awareness for students. So this is the concept that we have adopted from National Science Foundation. And also we have collaborated with New York Polytechnic School of Engineering, as well as New York Academy of Sciences, to embark this STEM program in our country. So from 2013, we start with benchmarking visit with New York, with the NYAS and NYU. We developed the Science of Smart Communities program, and we enroll it in the country, and also at international level. As you can see here, we went to Cambodia to carry out the STEM program. At that time, it was we go there and we do it face-to-face. We bring along our facilities and so on. But lately, we still conduct an international program and also a national program by using this blended learning approach, more on digital or digital technology approach. We still carry out this STEM education program, although it is actually hands-on and project-oriented, but we still manage to carry out the program using blended learning and also online learning, which is also blended learning, to make sure that the education, the STEM education, is still carry on and go on. And we have a few collaborators like ExxonMobil from the oil and gas company, and also from Apple, to join in to carry out the program together. This is the model of STEM education, actually, where you have to collaborate with industry player or stakeholders to together carry out the program. Either it is traditional way or blended learning, it doesn't matter. We just finished our program, which we call as Engineering Young, ExxonMobil Young Engineers Program, where we both conduct the program through online system. But we supply the kit, the STEM kit to the student, to the schools, and to the students, but we conduct it through online. So everybody is at home, but the education is still going on. So for STEM education, there are what we call as aim and also objective. As you can see here, at preschool, STEM education should be to develop the creativity of the students at pre and primary school. We have a few programs at preschool, is just to nurture and inspire interest. And we have a primary school program, which is make connection and build foundation, which we call as STEM early engineering. And at the secondary school, we develop a STEM program that is more on developing skills and literacy of the STEM. So we call it Science of Smart Community program. So that's where we start to put creativity and innovativity together at secondary and primary school. And at tertiary school, the STEM education continues. We develop creative, innovative, collaborative, and as well as entrepreneurial skills. So to structure the STEM program, you have to understand the nature or the level of education. STEM education should be start from early stage at preschool. Some countries start STEM education is quite late, where they start at secondary school, and then what the impact is that student interest and attention towards STEM is still low, because developing STEM education should be start from the beginning, which is preschool. Okay, why we should go for STEM education all over the world. I mean, United States, UK, China, Korea, and also Japan, yeah, are doing this STEM program. And I think India also towards developing STEM education at large, not only at one group, but at large throughout the country. So this is because the future of the economy is in STEM. James Round, the executive director of the STEM Education Coalition, that's where says that that's where the jobs of tomorrow will be. I can share with you, there are a few countries which is very poor, like what we have in Southeast Asia, like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar. It is because they do not have a good STEM education program and also institute in technical and also engineering. That's why the economy is still low, because there are still in producing engineers and scientists, they are still low to compare with other good countries. That is why the future of economy is in STEM. But how do you implement STEM actually in this era, which is related to pandemic COVID-19 and also industry revolution 4.0 and coming up with 5.0? You have to catch up the education of STEM education in line with the advanced technology or in line with the industrial needs. As we can see, the drivers of STEM education and also blended learning is actually the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution. I can say that the drivers of blended learning approach is also related to the fourth industrial revolution, and also a few other things like 21st century demand and also the industrial demand at the moment. So as we can see in the fourth industrial revolution, autonomous 3D printing, robotics, smart materials is one of the things in this revolution. So how do we approach that in blended learning? So we have to consider that. At the moment, I'm conducting courses to a group of students using the module of energy transportation. So we cannot do it face-to-face, but we still carry out through this Zoom platform. But we prepare all the materials and also the instruction materials by using the technology. So the program or the activity is still can be carried out. So another part of STEM education is you have to understand today's nature of work. Humanizing potential happens a lot in these days, where we make something more human to give attribute to human character. So this is another factor where there is a new job being created. We don't talk about the disruptive job, but there is a job, a new types of job is needed, and a new type of skill is needed in the fourth industrial revolution. So we should ask ourselves actually, where are you right now? Do we prepare our students to meet the industrial need, to meet the industrial revolution? And also all the aspect like COVID-19 era and so on. So blended learning approach is quite essential is very essential in STEM education. So when we talk about STEM education, it's about integrating technology and engineering concept. So integrating technology in the concept is one of the main aspect in STEM education. So using the engineering process is another way. So blended learning has to consider the instructional design, which is we call as engineering design process in the pedagogic or teaching and learning aspect, and how to experience the learning in a real world situation. At the moment, what we do is that to experience the learning in real world situation, we use this virtual reality to give environment to the students. Let's say about, about the environment of a sea, about the environment of a village and so on, about the environment of the habitat, animals and so on. We can experience, give the student experience through virtual reality. So STEM education can be carried out with the new technology that we have now, which is augmented reality, virtual reality, and also AI. And it has to be contextual learning, exposure to the social and cultural STEM context. So with blended learning, education should not be static. It can be dynamic by using the technology. So in our case, STEM education we still carry it out. So STEM education is about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, but it has a important role in developing human capital. One of the important role is to develop STEM citizen, which everyone, regardless they like it or not, about science or mathematics or technology or engineering, but we have to develop their knowledge related to STEM, because it has a connection with social context, well-being, and also economy. So in Malaysia, we are developing what we call as to culture the STEM education into all strata of community, to give awareness, to nurture interest for students, to nurture interest for them to get involved in STEM education in tertiary level and maybe become an engineers and scientists involved in industry. But for other communities, is for their social being and for their economic. So STEM education is also bringing up a new STEM field. And last but not least, to provide STEM workforce to the industry. So are the features of integrated STEM. As a teacher or students, we have to understand, especially for the teachers, you have to understand the fundamental of STEM. So STEM is based on world grand challenges, and it integrates a STEM element, which you have to consider the science, technology, and engineering in developing projects or activities of STEM. And what type of learning approach that you need to use in embarking the STEM integrated education. So either it is project-oriented problem-based learning, inquiry-based learning, engineering design principles, action research, collaborative learning, experimental project. All of this approach, teaching approach should be grounded as one into blended learning. You have to consider the blended learning at this moment, because there is no way you can do the teaching and learning with the old or traditional way. So, but you must remember or must also consider the fundamental of the education. That's where the technologies comes in to enhance the STEM education approach. So, and last but not least is the STEM literacy. For the STEM education, you have STEM learning approach, the appropriate STEM learning approach, and what is the aim of the STEM program is to develop students, enhance student literacy, the science and mathematics, 21st century skills, interest in STEM, and so many things about STEM literacy we can develop through STEM integrated program. So the STEM characteristic can be listed out as below, which is the curriculum should be transdisciplinary in its overall approach. So later on, my colleagues will explain or share with you about the blended learning, the using of technology in blended learning. But first or foremost, we have to consider the landscape of the STEM education, which the curriculum should be transdisciplinary in its overall approach. If you do not understand the curriculum landscape or the curriculum nature, maybe you will miss out the fundamental of STEM. Maybe you can only develop the cognitive part, but not the affective and psychomotor part. So considering the curriculum nature is very important. The teaching and learning nature is very important, where STEM education needs collaborative learning, project-oriented, problem-based learning, inquiry activities, design, experiment, and reflection. How do you do that? Through, blended learning. So blended learning, as everyone understands, is that there are traditional way, and also there are including or embed using the technology. So we have to consider how to deliver the teaching and learning under the fundamental of STEM, as well as the assessment. It is not about pencil and paper. It should be explicitly assess the learning outcome, and must use alternative evaluation techniques or portfolio-based performance. So for us, we normally develop, a software or a tools where we can explicitly assess the learning outcome, and also the students can upload and download and also get information of assessment and so on through online. And the support system should be clear, the active involvement of higher education, industry, community, and visit. And what we are looking at is students should be problem solvers, innovators, inventors, self-reliant, and logical thinkers. So can we produce students with blended learning, or just online system, this type of literacy or skills? So we have to be very detailed in developing students problem solving skills, inventive skills, and so on. So blended learning, I think, is another way of developing human capital as a whole. And for STEM education, it is not only about the integration of STEM, but you have to understand three aspects, which is important. As a research university or university of teaching and learning, you have to have a good governance and monitoring. And then under the governance, the organizational governance is important, about leadership, commitment, belief, and coordination. And also motivation, the intrinsic, extrinsic, and also organization plan behavior. And another part is that to develop STEM education, one should have strategic collaboration. So STEM education in school I did not say it cannot be carried out by school, but it should be better if there is a smart collaboration between schools, higher institution, or research center, and also industry player. As you can see, we have a lot of industry like ExxonMobil, Felda, Apple, and also Ministry of Higher Education get involved in developing STEM contemporary programs to be used by the schools. And also you have to have a good approach to develop a STEM education program, like PO, PBL, engineering design process, systems thinking, STEM lesson studies, STEM inquiry-based learning, collaborative learning, action-oriented teaching and learning, STEM research-based learning. So this approach, I think, is suitable as a part of blended learning. With that, thank you very much. And I'll pass it to my colleague.
Good afternoon. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, yes, ma'am. It is audible. It is audible. Please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. First of all, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon for everyone who participate in this workshop. Okay, today I'm going to talk about system thinking in project-oriented STEM learning. And I would like to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Siti Nordiana, and you can call me Dr. Diana from STEM Enculturation Research Center, Faculty of Education, UKM. My expertise is in education for sustainable development and also STEM education. Just a brief introduction about my work in system thinking. I'm started doing research about system thinking in education for sustainable development during my PhD years at University of Queensland, Australia. And after that, I expand system thinking application in STEM education because as you know that system thinking actually it can be applied in a various field, including STEM education, ESD, problem solving, and also in an organizational learning. But for today's workshop, I will focus system thinking on how we can integrate system thinking in project-oriented STEM learning. Okay. Okay, this is the presentation outline. First, I'm going to introduce what is system thinking. And in the second part, I will talk about how to integrate system thinking in project-oriented STEM learning. And I will also give some example on what project have I done in using system thinking in project-oriented STEM learning. Okay. Okay, so first is we have to know what is system thinking. Okay, have you ever heard about story, The Blind Man with an Elephant? I think this is quite a famous story that everyone knows about. It is a story of a group of blind men who have never come across an elephant before and who learned and imagined what the elephant is like by just touching it. Each blind man feels a different part of the elephant body, but only one part, such as the side or the tusk. They then describe the elephant based on their limited experience. And their description of the elephant is different from each other. For example, here, this man said that this elephant shaped like a snake. And then this guy said the elephant is like a wall because they only depend on their limited experience and their description. And then the moral is that is trying to be conveyed in the story is the importance of having a holistic view in something to avoid mistake or some type of false impression in when we're doing some decision making. The connection of the story with system thinking is the behavior of a system. It cannot be known just knowing the element of the system. We should have a holistic view, then we can know what actually been happening to the system. Okay. Okay, first, when we want to know about system thinking, first we should know how to define a system. I think most of us already familiar with like human body system, a system in a car, they call it a living system and non-living system. And a system is we want to define it is a group of interacting, that is the word interacting, interrelated and interdependent parts or components that form a complex and also a unified whole. Ecological system, such as human social system, they are a living system. While human-made systems such as cars, washing machine, they are non-living system. Okay, so this is an example of a human body system, which the digestive system I show here is the digestive system, and every organ in the digestive system, it has a function in this. It has a function in the system. If there a problem in one part, for example, if the liver has a problem, it will impact the whole digestive system. Same with the system in a car. Sometimes if the car has a problem with the battery, it will impact the performance, the overall performance of the car. Okay. Okay, and as I mentioned before, every system, it has a purpose within a larger system. For example here, because I'm from biology, maybe my example is, most of the examples come from the biology. In the human body system, there is 11 main systems that need to function properly to allow human physiological function to run smoothly. All systems here have parts that are arranged in a certain way so that it can perform its purpose. The system changes over time in response to changes in the environment or a feedback received. I think this is quite a straight away on how we can define what system is. Okay, this is quite easy example for you to understand what is meant by system and also a subsystem. Just now, I show you the example of a living system with which is consists of human body system, and here is a non-living system in a bicycle. As you know that the bicycle, it has several subsystems in a bicycle for a bicycle to function. First is the wheel, drivers and gears, frames and materials, brake and steering, aerodynamic, and also human power. This bicycle subsystem, each of it have its own purpose or function to make the bicycle work. And then the next example, this is quite an abstract example. Cities also a system. It is also a system, because in the context of a city as a system, city subsystem could include the government, corporation, small and medium-sized business, university, resident, hospital, and so on. So as I explained before, system, it can be a living system, non-living system, and also a social system. So next, I will talk about what is system thinking. Okay, system thinking, it can help the students to develop higher order thinking skill in order to understand and address a complex interdisciplinary real world problem. So this characteristic of system thinking actually is a very appropriate for STEM learning, as we know that STEM learning always involved with the real world problem, and also it is interdisciplinary. And the practical application of system thinking, it offers a very powerful approach to solve problem in a holistic and also in a sustainable manner. When we apply effectively the system thinking methodology, it can unpack a complex problem to more effectively when we want to effectively address a deeper issue, when compare if we're using just a linear approaches. Okay, this is what I'm going to summarize is, or in other words, through system thinking, we want to train students to not only analyze the data or information that they have, but also the student able to synthesize and explain the meaning of data that they have. So as you see here, sometimes the student, they have a data, but they are unable to explain the data with a story. Actually, the information alone or data alone is not enough to solve a problem. There's come thinking. The student need to use the thinking to turn information or the data into a knowledge. This is what I want to summarize why we need to introduce, why we need to encourage students to think or using the system thinking. And this is they call it a system thinking iceberg. Actually, this is one of the tools that we can use in the classroom or in the teaching and learning activity with the students when we want to encourage them to think in a systemic way. The iceberg metaphor, I think everyone is familiar with the iceberg metaphor. It helps to probe the underlying causes of events and also a pattern, because the problem that we observe every day, actually the problem doesn't tend to happen in isolation. They tend to be a part of a complex dynamic web of interconnected element and also event. And by using the system thinking, it will help us to understand the interaction and also their effect. For example, here, event is what we observe in everyday life, what is occurring, and the patterns, what are the trend that happening, and what are the structure that inherent in the system, and what are the mental model. Sometimes we do not always understood what are the mental model that actually influence the event that we observe in everyday life. For example, here, I would like to show you. Okay, this is the iceberg model that I showed you before. How we can use this iceberg model as a tool to help us to discover a pattern or a behavior. For example, here, the event that happened is we catching a cold, and the pattern we can see that here, the example here, I've been catching more colds when I'm sleeping less. This is the pattern that happens over time. And the structure here, what has influenced the pattern? What are the relationship between the parts? It's stated here: more stress at work, not eating well, difficulty accessing healthy food near home or work. And this is the structure that influence the pattern and also the event. And next is the mental model. This is actually is quite tricky and quite difficult for us to to identify what are the mental model. And here it stated that because the mental model that this person have is career is the most important piece of our identity. Healthy food is too expensive. Rest is for the unmotivated. So this is the mental model that actually influence what is happening, what the event is happening. Okay, actually we can use the iceberg model if we want to identify the root cause of the problem, or sometimes we just want to understand what is happening, what actually been happening. Okay, when we talk about system thinking, actually has four main domain. First is the mindset, is how to approach the systemic problem. Second is content, is what is in the system. Third is structure, how the system is organized. And 4 is behavior, what happens when content and structure interact. And this is the system thinking domain. The first domain is mindset, how to approach the systemic problem. I show you the example here. A system thinker, they usually seek to understand the big picture of some event that been happening. For example, here, this is the question that we can ask ourselves, or we can ask the students in order for them to have a big picture of some events or some problems. And the system thinker also, still in the mindset domain, they changes perspective to increase understanding. Sometimes it is important to change our perspective. For example, here, if we design something, for example, for special needs user, sometimes we need to change our perspective using a user perspective, not as the designer or not as the engineer's perspective, in order to increase the understanding. So this is the type of question that we can ask the students to change to encourage them to think using a different perspective. Next is still in the mindset domain. The system thinker, they consider how mental model affect current reality and also the future, because we know that everything is happening. Actually, it is being influenced with our mental model. And a system thinker also, they will consider an issue fully and resist the urge to come to a quick conclusion. But sometimes is we need to say that how much time do we need to allow to consideration of the issue. And next domain is the content. It is important for system thinker to recognize what are the elements in the system, and also to maintain the boundaries, because when everything is interconnected, to identify your boundaries can be a challenge. Without a clear boundary, there are infinite interconnected possibilities. So with a student, sometimes I will ask them to limit the variables when I ask them to identify what are the elements in the system. Sometimes I was just I will ask the students to identify, for example, 5 variables in the system, so that they do not become like overwhelmed with the complexity of the system, because this is like what we call that, a beginner of to train the student to think in the systemic way. And then next domain is the structure, how the element in the system is organized. In this domain, we encourage the students to identify the relationship between the element in the system, or between the variable that that exists in the system. For example, here, the system thinker recognized that a system structure generates its behavior. And this is the question that we can ask to the student. For example, how do parts affect one another? How does the organization and interaction of the parts create the behavior that emerge? And next is, we need to encourage students to identify the circular nature of complex cause and effect relationship, because sometimes the event that happen, they are not linear, like A cause to B. Sometimes it happens in the circular nature of cause and effect relationship. And next is a system thinker also need to be able to make a meaningful connection within and also between the system. This is quite an advanced skill in system thinking. And next is the behavior. The behavior is what happens when content and the structure interact. The system thinker, they need to recognize the impact of time delay when exploring cause and effect relationship, because sometimes the impact of an action, it doesn't happen immediately. Sometimes it takes time to show the impact of an action. For example, like the climate change, it doesn't happen immediately when we, like, for example, when we're using more energy or something. It will take time to show that the impact that is happening. So when we're using system thinking tools in the classroom, we always encourage students to have the skill to recognize the impact of time delay when they exploring cause and effect relationship. And also system thinker, they will consider short terms and also long term, and also unintended consequences of action. This is quite important because sometimes when the students or us planning of something, we doesn't see that what is the unintended consequences of action. And next is system thinker also, they need to be able to observe how element within the system changes over time. This is like they have to have an ability to see the patterns and trends that are happening. And system thinker also pay attention to accumulation and their rates of changes. And last but not least, this is very important skill we want to encourage the student is to identify the possible leverage action. Leverage action is actually what are the small action that we can do that will produce a desirable result. This is very important skill that we want the students or the individual have when we train them on how to using to think in a systemic way. And this is the type set of skill that usually we include in the system thinking module. First is dynamic thinking. As I explained before, dynamic thinking is the ability to see and deduce behavior pattern. And cause-effect thinking, ability to identify if the two concepts are related, correlated, or they have a causal relationship. And holistic thinking, see how relationship that may extend far in the space or time, and also the closed loop thinking. This one, you want the students to recognize causality as an ongoing interdependent process. And this is the example. Cause and effect thinking is quite straightforward, like A cause to B. It's like linear thinking. I think this is, we already familiar with a cause and effect thinking. Next is closed loop thinking, A cause to B, and in the meantime, B also will influence back to A. And this is the dynamic thinking, where the students are able to see the pattern, able to identify the pattern or trend happening over the time. And this is the holistic thinking. Okay, I would like to show some example about if we unable to consider the whole system in a certain situation. For example, here, these two guys here say that sure glad the whole is not at our end. Actually, they also will face the consequences because they also in the same system. I mean that they also in the same boat with these two guys here. But they're still happy because they unable to see that this is a problem that also will impact them in the meantime. And then this is also some example. This guy here say that he thinks that it looks safe because he just concentrating on the particular, and he fails to see the whole situation. That's why I said that in system thinking, we encourage the individual or the students to think in the holistic way so that they can have a big picture of some event or some problem. And we can relate back with the story, the blind man with an elephant just now that I already explained it to you at the beginning of my presentation. And next is the unintended consequences. This is also in system thinking. We also need to consider the unintended consequences when dealing with a complex problem. For example here, okay, this is a quite linear thinking that we always practice in our daily life or maybe in the school. And what is different? Linear thinking and system thinking. We are very familiar with linear thinking. For example, here, we think that when the tourism is enhanced, this will bring more tourists. And we create more jobs and generates more money, and this will improve quality of life. However, if we think using system thinking, the situation is not as linear as or not as simple as we thought, like in the previous slide. Increased number of tourists will impact the social issue, pollution, waste management, and other things. So careful decisions should be made when dealing with a situation or problem that involve many parts or dimensions. I always done this exercise with my students in the environmental education class, because when we want to teach the student about sustainable development, they have to think in a systemic way, because they have to consider the environmental part, the social part, and also the economic part when they want to when they want to planning the intervention of some of the environmental problems. Okay, just like I have explained the introduction about the system thinking. As I mentioned before, system thinking, it can be applied in various fields and also in daily life. But for today's workshop, I will specific system thinking in STEM learning. Okay, before I proceed in explaining how we can integrate system thinking in project-oriented STEM learning, I will explain about the STEM learning framework. I think that Prof. Sattar already touched about what STEM learning should be and what the learning approaches that we can use in STEM learning. And this is the work from Tybalt et al. 2018. This suggests that to integrated STEM education should involve integration of STEM content, means that integration for science, technology, engineering as mathematics. It problem-centered learning. It is inquiry-based learning, design-based learning, and also cooperative learning. So, and how system thinking and STEM actually is quite a good match, because system thinking, it can assist the process of STEM discipline integration by encouraging students to consider the wholes rather than parts when dealing with the problem. Furthermore, STEM education, because usually dealing with solve real world problem, and a real world problem, it is not as linear or simple as we thought, because sometimes it is multidimensional, and both the problem and solution, it cut across multiple disciplines and also spheres. And sometimes to solve some issue, sometimes the technical solution alone is not enough. Sometimes it involves also the social and non-technical aspect of the problem. And there's come the system thinking that we need to encourage the student to using the multiple perspective when they want to solve the real world problem. And okay, and this is the systemic literature review that I conducted on studies related to system thinking and STEM integration. In general, system thinking is applied in integrated STEM through these three approaches. First is a problem-based, inquiry-based, and also design-based learning. But for today's workshop, because I've been asked to explain about project-oriented STEM learning, so I will focusing on a problem-based and also the design-based, how we can integrate system thinking in problem-based and also design-based STEM integrated approaches. Actually, I've done some study. I have developed a module on using system thinking in a problem-oriented project-based learning. And I also developed a module on how to integrate system thinking. I call it a systemic design thinking in STEM learning. Okay, this is what I'm talking about just now. I combining system thinking and also design thinking, and they call it systemic design thinking, because by integrating system thinking and design thinking, it will increase the opportunity of the students of making right and sustainable design, because through the system thinking, designer or engineers or the scientists, they can understand the world around them better. While system thinking make design thinking goal-oriented intentionally and strategically. And it also deliver value creation to the society. And as we know that each of these system thinking and design thinking, it has like it has some limitation, and by combining these two approach, actually it can it can complement each other. For example, here to create a meaningful intervention or innovation, you must first understand the context of the system in which you are designing. And design thinking, it has some bias toward developing products and service that later may become a problem in system context, because sometimes when we're using the design thinking is driven by the desire rather than improvement. And the integration of system thinking into the design thinking process, it gives context to the scope of design work and enable the creation of more meaningful and intentional solution. It is means of embracing the chaos and to explore the interconnected complexity of the problem of the system. And design thinking also, it is a reductive approach to problem solving that may lead to the creation of unintended consequences. Meanwhile, in contrast, system thinking, it is a holistic lens to view the context. It's quite different with the design thinking. And while taking into consideration the interdependencies and relation of all elements. So this is the next, I will show you the example how I'm combining these two approaches, system thinking and also design thinking. I developed a module for students to design an energy efficient homes appliance. I'm using this 7-step systemic design thinking. First is student need to frame the system. Students need to listening to the system, underlying the system, defining the desired future, exploring the possibility space, designing the intervention model, and fostering the transition. This is the 7-step that I'm using in the module. And the task is students need to design an energy efficient homes appliance. Okay, next is, this is another example that I developed a module how to use system thinking in problem-oriented project-based learning. This is I applied a system thinking in a POPBL. This column, this blue column show each POPBL step. It has a 6 step here: problem orientation and analysis, activation of existing knowledge, project objective, project commencement, project implementation and evaluation, and project presentation. And I designed the activities here. For example, here for the first section of POPBL, the activities is Oh My Food, because this is the module for urban farming. I'm using urban farming program as a main activity in this for this module. And for each activity, this is the system thinking skill that I integrate in each POPBL step. For example, Oh My Food, the objective is I want the students to identify the relationship between population, food security, and environmental sustainability. So the skill, system thinking skill here is holistic thinking. And as you can see here, the rest is, this is the system thinking skill that I integrate with each of the POPBL step. And this is how I'm link STEM with the curriculum. For example, I place the real world problem as the main focus of the activity, and how I integrate a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics topic in the module, and how I integrate all the system thinking skill in all the activities. This is the example that I have used in the module, talk about the urban farming practices. So for the science element is about the basic planets, technology, student using Arduino to create an NFT system. Engineering is how the students need to use their engineering knowledge to design an NFT system. And mathematics is how the students need to apply their knowledge in gradient and a straight line. Because okay, this is the example. Because the module I developed using during COVID-19 pandemic, so enable it is quite difficult to go to the school, and I'm using I'm just asking the student to design the NFT system or urban farming system using the Tinkercad. As you know, that Tinkercad is a free software that you can use with the students. In Tinkercad, actually, is quite I think it's quite easy to use, because you can show the student how to design, and next they also can do some simulation using the Tinkercad, and it is a free software that you can explore and using with a student. I'm using this Tinkercad for my urban farming module just now that I show you just now. Okay, and this is the tools that we can use in our classroom to encourage students to think in a systemic way. First, they call it behavior over time, which is we connect the variable with the time. For example, here the y-axis over x-axis is for the time, and this is dynamic thinking skill. This is a very simple example that students in the primary school, and how we want to encourage them to think in a systemic way. The student investigate how the ice melts under the sun and also under the shade. So they plot a graph. And this is next is some example. This is also we call it a behavior over time graph. And next is a BOT graph showing the CO2 sources and accumulation. Usually in my environmental education class, I'm using the BOT graph as a point for discussion with the students. And for the discussion with the students, This is the key question that you can ask the students to encourage them to think in a dynamic way. For example, here, what important element have changed over time, and how has like the variable changed over time? And this is the question that you can use in the classroom to encourage students to think in a dynamic way. And also, this is some tools, we call it collect and cluster. And this is the key question that we can ask the students. For example, why did you cluster the factor as you did? How did clustering the factor help you begin to explore the problem? I'm using this type of question in the activity when I want the students to first, when they want to understand the problem. For example, in the urban farming module just now, when I want them to understand the food security problem, the environmental problem, I'm using this key question to encourage them to think in a holistic way. And we also can use the fishbone diagram. I think everyone already familiar about this. Like we can use the diagram to analyze a problem statement and also to brainstorm the causes of the problem. And usually we can use a 5 why technique in tandem with the fishbone diagram. 5 why technique actually is to identify the root cause of the problem. And this is the feedback loops that can we use with the students. We can use this feedback loop to encourage the students to think like in a closed loop thinking. Sometimes they are unable to see the connection of some variable to another variables. And the closed loop, it has a positive, they call it the feedback loop. It can be positive and it also can be negative. Negative means that negative feedback loops are self-regulating and useful for maintaining an optimal state with a specific boundaries. And this is the example of feedback loops. This is quite easy example on how the heating mechanism is activated and make the body temperature increase. And when the body temperature increase, we will have a cooling mechanism with it, sweating. This is quite a simple example for we can use in introduction with the student on how to using feedback loops before we move to the more complex and complicated problem. And this is some example. This is quite a complicated diagram of using feedback loops because we want to integrate all the system thinking skill when we ask the student to plot, or we ask the student to draw this feedback loop in the exercise. I always using this exercise with my students, especially in the ESD class, because they have to think many variables when they investigate some of the problems. And this is some key question that we can ask, like when one factor changes, how does it impact another related factor? Okay, this is quite easy. Because I have done this with the secondary school student. I asked them to imagine and to design a smart bike. First, they need to identify the properties of the various subsystems of a bicycle. As I show you previously, the bicycle has some subsystem, and they need to identify, they need to examine how the subsystem is related to the whole. This is the question. They need to think of this question. For example, here, like, why do road bike have a thin tires while mountain bike have a fat tires? And what is a gear ratio, and how do gears help make the bicycle so efficient? So this is type of question that students need to think when they want to design a smart bike. And I give them this metric table. I asked the student to think about how each subsystem in a bicycle will affect the speed, the safety, the comfort, and the durability of the bicycle. This type of activity, it will encourage the student to think in the systemic way. And I think that this type of the activity we can done face to face with the student, and also we can done online with the student, so that it depends on our creativity on how to make it blended STEM learning. And I think that's all my sharing today. Any question, or we proceed with another presentation with my colleague, Dr. Malisa is here.
Yes.
Okay, over to you, Dr. Malisa.
Okay, are you sure there is no question for Dr. Siti Nurdiana Mahmud? No question? Okay, if there's no question, I will start with my talk. So actually, we have listened to the talk by Prof. Sattar Rasul regarding STEM conception at the beginning of this session, and also followed by Dr. Siti Nurdiana about system thinking. So first of all, STEM is a broad area, and there are a lot of potentials to be explored in STEM field. Learning process in STEM actually can be done in various ways to maximize the benefit. Therefore, it is suggested that the teaching practice for STEM involve manipulation and hands-on learning, cooperative learning, inquiry, problem solving, and technology-enhanced learning, as mentioned by Dr. Siti Nurdiana before. And one of the major challenges of STEM education is to provide learning experience that are meaningful to students with different needs. And the visual intensity of STEM integrated learning itself arises from representation and models of phenomena, which is might be difficult for us to deliver to students. So with technology nowadays, there are a lot of approach that we can use when teaching or learning STEM. Since today we are talking about blended learning, so I'm going to touch on the topic of augmented reality blended learning in STEM. So let me share the screen for my talk today. Wait. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so for STEM, actually a traditional solution to address related problem is to deliver lectures in the classroom, which is actually not fully effective and economical. So students neither grasp or effectively understand the concept in traditional learning or in simple book reading. So the trend of learning is improved from simple learning to e-learning, and now it leads to blended learning. So I think we all know that blended learning is the concept that combines the advantage of e-learning with traditional methods of learning, that is face-to-face interaction in classroom. It is the learning program where more than one method of concept delivery are being used to enhance student learning and also to decrease the cost of the program. So when learning, sometimes students actually they want to see pictures or animations to elaborate the concept instead of just simple text reading within blended learning. So the point here, with the development of digital learning, blended learning integrating a variety of multimedia technology and different learning method has become a very hot topic in educational research. So we heard, we've been hearing about blended learning all over the world. So we are now venturing into blended learning, especially with the pandemic nowadays. And also there are various studies that shows the potential of computer assisted instruction to benefit blended learning environments, and also to increase the flexibility and interaction of learning activities. And recently, I think we hear and we see the use of augmented reality in education a lot, especially in various fields such as science, physics, engineering, medic, because it is an instruction tools that can enhance users' experience. Before I went further into this topic, let me give you a brief explanation on what is augmented reality, just to make sure that everyone are aware of what is augmented reality, even though I'm sure everyone knows already. So augmented reality is a technology that allows virtual object to be simultaneously superimposed on real image or real environment. So it means virtual objects are viewed in the same environment as the real world. So augmented reality is one of the biggest technology on trends right now, and I think it's only going to get bigger because I think most of our smartphones today and also other device, these devices are all equipped with augmented reality functions. So I think it's going to be more and more explored in the future. So augmented reality actually let us see the live environment right in front of us. So compared to virtual reality is an immersive environment where everything that you see is in the virtual world. So that's the difference between augmented reality and also virtual reality. Let me show. Okay, so augmented reality actually, it always begins with the users itself. Okay, the users is in the middle. Fundamentally, the users is what augmented reality is all about. It is the user's interface that allow people to experience the world differently. Basically, it's a technology that makes what you already see way more cooler and also way more interesting. So augmented reality is increasingly being adopted in educational setting, often to help students with complicated subjects such as geometrics, science, physics, engineering, graphics, and many more. So mostly this technology is used to enhance information delivery, such as when we learn about complex compound, such as in science, we learn about acids and oxides. So when we have the students to virtually modify molecular structure and also to create new substance virtually, so this are far more effective and also interactive compared to when we just show it on the slideshow or video or printed on paper, which this process can make students to understand better on the concept itself. So augmented reality in education, it can serve a number of purposes. It can help the students to easily acquire, process, and remember the information. And also it can make the learning itself more engaging and fun. Augmented reality is also not limited to single age group or also level of education. It can be used equally well in all level of schooling, from preschool up to higher institution. So even at work, even after education, after the learning process at work, we can still use augmented reality, where we see nowadays there's a lot of what do you call it, marketing approach that use augmented reality, such as IKEA itself, the large corporation. So they even use augmented reality for their marketing approach. So augmented reality itself is a part of a larger extended reality concept, which also includes virtual reality and also mixed reality technologies. So it enhances the real world environment with a lot of elements such as text, sound effects, graphics, and also multimedia. So in other words, it brings us an enriched version of our immediate surroundings by layering digital content on top of the graphic representation of the real world. So actually to use augmented reality is just pretty basic, such as we can just use our smartphone cameras. I'm sure you all are familiar with Pokemon Go. So you just use the smartphone cameras to use the augmented reality function. And as I mentioned before, our smartphones nowadays are equipped with camera, where sometimes when you turn on the camera, there are these sticker functions where you click on any stickers and point the camera to your face. It will track your face and also shows the sticker with your face. So these are actually some of the basic AR function that I'm sure we all are aware of. So basically, augmented reality in education and training has a wide array of users, and also it enables its users to learn on the go using a real-time environment. So the potential of augmented reality for education, especially, it can enhance users' experience. So instead of having a single experience, just I mentioned before, learning assets using printed materials. So when we use the virtual molecular structure, so it can help to enhance the experience to another level. And next is higher student engagement and interest. So interactive or gamified AR learning actually can have a significant positive impact on students. It will help students to keep them engaged throughout the lessons and to make the learning fun and effortless. Other than that, accessible learning materials help students to have access to learning materials anytime and anywhere. So augmented reality has the potential to replace the traditional paper textbooks, physical models, and also printed manuals. So it is less expensive than the previous learning materials, where we can just reuse and reuse and reuse the materials without having to like printed materials. We have to print and reprint. So there's a lot of cost on that. So when using augmented reality, we can reduce the cost on that side. So education becomes more accessible and mobile when we use augmented reality. And last one is a faster and more effective learning process. So AR in education helps students to achieve better results through visualization and full immersion in subject matter. So instead of reading theory about something, student can see with their own eyes in action. So despite a common misbelief that AR technologies can offer so much more, like this example, you can see that instead of looking at the models and pointing out with our hand that, okay, this is the right lung, this is the ribs, this is the brain. So instead of what do you call that, having pointed out all the name of the organs with our mouth, with our voice, which sometimes the students won't even remember after we explain it to them. So why not we use augmented reality where they can just scan the models and the name of each organ will come out on the screen, so that they can just whenever they don't remember the name of the organ, they can just scan the models, and then the name will reappear again and again and again. So these are the next example. These are actually engineering graphics or engineering drawing. So for some students, they have problems to visualize three-dimensional models. So if we integrated augmented reality with this subject, we can help students who have difficulties in visualization to visualize better when we provide them with the three-dimensional objects of the images on the printed materials. Okay, these are also augmented reality in geometric, which is the function is quite similar to the previous one that I mentioned about engineering drawing. So this is the advantages of AR in education, and also can be used in STEM education. So basically, I have divided the advantages into three what you call three advantages, which is first is contribution to learner, interaction, and educational outcomes. So as we can see, advantage of AR in education is that it can increase achievement. So when they learn using AR, which can help them to understand better, it can also help them to achieve way better, which is will increase their what you call it, their mastery in the subject itself. So it can also increase their motivation, develop positive attitudes, develop spatial ability or visualization, as I mentioned earlier, and also it can make learning easier. For interaction, it can provide real-time interaction, such as when I mentioned about virtually modify or virtually what you call it, we play with the virtual object, so it can increase the interaction among students and the content itself. And the last one is educational outcomes. When using AR, it will lead to fun learning and also individualized teaching. Students will also be able to learn at desired time and space, and also provides in-depth learning where students are able to understand deeper than compared to when using a traditional approach. So the use of augmented reality for STEM subject actually can benefit the digital generation in the 21st century. So children can use augmented reality to observe the habits of butterflies in their natural habits, which allow them to closely observe just as real scientists do in an augmented reality environment. Or just like I showed before, medical students can study the internal organs of humans virtually without having to open up a human body. So the issue now is not many people can develop augmented reality based materials for their own use. There are even some educators who never even heard of augmented reality before. So as we are now in the industrial revolution 4.0, you know, so we as educators, we should learn and also familiarize with how to integrate augmented reality or even other technologies such as virtual reality or mixed reality into their teaching and learning in a meaningful way. They must also be able to diagnose students' learning needs and also select the most appropriate ways and strategies to implement them in their instructional materials. Only then they will be able to tailor the use of augmented reality to meet the students' need and also to take advantage of augmented reality in their instructional design. So using augmented reality in blended learning approach has many potential if it used correctly, while taking into account all the important aspects in the teaching learning itself, such as the curriculum outcomes, students, and other important aspects. So last but not least, augmented reality is helpful in increasing students' motivation, fostering collaboration among students, developing special abilities, and improving performance in physical tests. So I think that's all for my part. So I'm going to pass to my colleague, Dr. Nur Azidawati. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, yes, ma'am. It is. We can hear, and also we can visible your slide.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Samir. Okay, hi and good morning, everyone. My name is Nura Zidawati Muhammad Asad, and same like my other colleague, I am from STEM Enculturation Center, University Kebangsaan Malaysia. And in this session, I just want to give you an overview about design thinking process, and it is already mentioned briefly by Dr. Diana. Okay. During this presentation, I will discuss this topic in 3 parts. First, the introduction of design thinking, and the second part is the design thinking process and their elements and conclusion. Okay, actually, what is the design thinking? Simply say, design thinking is philosophy and set of tools to help you to solve the problem creatively. For example, when you and your team want to create something new or solve the complex problem, you can use design thinking to get the solution of the problem. In this term, design thinking provides a solution-based approach to solving problems. It is a way of thinking and working as well as the collection of hands-on methods. However, there are many STEM process and approach that we're familiar with that can be used to solve problem. For example, we're familiar with the problem-based and a project-based approach, but design thinking is different from those approach. Uniquely, design thinking is focusing on human-centered innovation. Design thinking is empathizing and figure out who you are designing for and what their needs are. Then it will helping you to solve the problem based on the needs of the target people. In summary, we can say that design thinking combines the problem-solving roots of design with deep empathy for the user. It draws upon logic, imagination, intuition, and systemic reasoning to explore potential possibilities and create desired outcome that benefit the end user. Okay, there are 5 steps of design thinking process, as you can see here. First, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Okay, another useful way to think about design thinking is as alternating a period of play and focus, which represent as a wave broadening and narrowing over time. As you can see here, flaring and focusing are distinct and critical states in design thinking. When you're solving the problem, you need to expand your thinking as widely as possible to take in lots of inspiration, generate new ideas and information, and to quickly imagine lots of different approaches and solutions. And this is we call flaring for divergent thinking, whereby at this part whereby you look for the most of solutions to a problem. Meanwhile, at other parts of the process, it is important to narrow down your thinking and address one particular challenge with one particular solution. And it is called focusing. Focusing requires convergent thinking with the goal of finding one idea or small subsets of ideas, analyze or distill information, decision making, and also define the problem. Okay, as you can see in this slide, it is important to note that the 5 phases of design thinking is a non-linear process and it is not always sequential. We do not have to follow any specific order, and it can often occur in parallel and repeat iteratively. And you should not understand the phase as a hierarchical or step-by-step process. You should look at it as an overview of the phases that contribute to the innovative project rather than sequential steps. But it is important for you to start at empathy and test each phases to understand the users, redefine the problems, and also creating new ideas. Okay, it's important because it just critical thinking skills and instill a passion for innovation. And beyond the benefits of learning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM assists the problem solving and also exploratory learning that fuels success across a variety of tasks and disciplines. And you can see here, STEM education is fit with design thinking, where design thinking is the real world approach. used to create solutions to problems. The design thinking models apply to STEM as it requires discipline knowledge from each of science, particularly the science concept and practice, technology as a tool, engineering practice and design process, and probability and algebraic thinking for mathematics component. So ideate, design and prototype test the prototype and come up with a possible solution. Okay, the first step of design thinking is to promote empathy and discovery. According to Hodge and Miles, empathy is umbrella term capturing the range of a person respond to another individual experience. Okay, this is the part of the process where you enter the user's world and make a contact. The goal of empathy is to learn about the difficulties people face in addition to uncovering their unspoken needs and wants in order to explain their behavior. The key here is to absorb what people are going through and feel what they are feeling instead of reacting and immediately trying to solve the problem. As mentioned earlier, our goal during discovery is to developing our situation using our imagination and displaying our emotional sensitivity in order to gain the right kind of insight that lead to making a more valuable differences. Okay, this is the step on how you can build your empathy and discovery. What you need to do is you need to put yourself into end user shoes, deep dive into learning their needs and uncover the problem you are trying to solve. And then you utilize the discovery and empathy components, help you to build a solid foundation of your ideas. You need to ask the right set of questions to explore the problem and activities that can be used to identify the user needs. You can done it by interview, observation, brainstorming, and also document analysis. Okay, when designing or solving the problem, what you need to put in your mind, as what Tim Brown said, empathy is the heart of design. Without the understanding of what others see, feel, and experience, design is a pointless task. So in this term, empathy is the most important in design thinking process. Okay, next, define. At define phase, you have to clearly articulate the problem you want to solve. At this stage, to reframe the problem, you need to synthesize the activities or the method you want, the method you use when you collecting the information from the first stage, which is the empathize stage, such as I've already said before this, by interview, observation, brainstorming, and others method. Okay, to clearly define the problem, you need to always ask yourself this question, such as, what is the problem we are trying to solve? Have we identified the problem, and is it the real one? Where are we moving? Are we moving in the right direction? And we have all the relevant information like problem definition, constraint, impact, and etc. Who are we helping here? Identify the users group who would get benefited. And what is the differentiator and value of proposition? If the problem is solved, what are the benefits and advantages for the users group? Okay, the next stage is ideation. Ideation is a creative process where you generate ideas. At this stage, you need to have open mind to produce as many ideas as they can to address the problem statement in facilitated judgment-free environment. Okay, this is an example of method on how you can generate your idea. To generate idea, you can, for example, you can produce the maximum number of ideas in a single session. You can encourage wild ideas, feasibility of the idea, build on the idea of others, communicate, think user-centered, and refine ideas based on user. You can use this method to generate your ideas. Okay, next, prototype. At this stage, prototype are often used in the final testing phase in a design thinking process. In order to determine how we behave, how the user behave with the prototype. A prototype is a simple experimental model of a proposed solution we use to test or validate ideas. The fundamental aspect of prototype is to experiment, fail often and early. This step deals with building the ideas and checking for feasibility of the build, pilot, or prototype to arrive at the final solution. By building prototype, you can simulate your real user condition and interaction. And the last stage is testing. Testing in design thinking always involves generating user feedback as related to the prototype you have developed. As you see here, testing. As you see in this slide, testing is the iterative phase in design thinking process, where you have to repeatedly and continuously test the prototype and other stages of design thinking process and iterate the design. Okay, at this stage, as I mentioned earlier, it is the iterative process of the design thinking process. Where you provide the team with user feedback based on rigorous testing of the prototype. And the primary goal of the testing is to learn what works, what does not, and then iterate and improve. This phase ensure that the team comes back to the essential core of the design thinking. For example, empathy with users and designing as per their needs. Okay, and in the blended learning environment, we need to understand that what is the best condition to apply design thinking process in the physical and virtual environment. In physical space, it is best where the ideas unfold in a free and flexible working environment. And in physical space also, a team needs optimal spatial conditions so that it can develop its creative process. Meanwhile, in virtual space or virtual conditions, it benefits to the user where they can use online collaborative space, and in addition, it's a real-time collaboration. And last but not least, in conclusion, design thinking design thinking process is a good design match the criteria of desirability, feasibility, and profitability. Design thinking process is an iterative process, and we must put in our mind that empathy is the heart of the design. And lastly, design thinking team should consist of mixed expertise. Okay, that's all of my presentation. Then if you have any question, maybe you can ask after this or in chat box. Then we post it to Dr. Samir. Thank you.